Hello, my name is Nida Duck, and welcome to Capo's Guide to the Roadside Rampage, which in my opinion is Psycho's most unique shotgun. I hope you enjoy my video. For the gun's description, it has plus 33% clip size, plus 33% reserve ammo, and minus 13% spread. Okay, that's pretty good. I wonder what the downsides are. Minus 25% damage, minus 25% firing speed. Okay, that's pretty bad. However, the stats don't mention the passive effect being the more damage dealt, the more rage you'll gain, making the gun do more damage, firing speed, and giving it a faster reload time. The extra clip size makes it seem that the reload is a lot longer than what it actually is. This makes secondary guns more useful for the weapon. The weapon's description is, damaging vehicles with a roadside rampage builds up meter that increases fire rate, damage, and the reload speed of the weapon. At maximum charge, each pellet deals 1.5 the base damage. The meter will constantly drain, but drains lower with reloading. The roadside rampage is a very unique weapon, being a soft snowball weapon where dealing damage results in a temporary boost of damage, fire rate, and reload speed. However, unlike most light snowball weapons, it is a constant effect instead of a temporary effect like the backstraight business or quickshot rifle. And while with other snowball weapons, they can be powerful and useful without the effect, the roadside rampage needs to be able to gain rage to put out real damage and be able to help your team. Meaning that the roadside rampage is more reliant on light snowball mechanics, like having a constant source of damage. Looking at this graph, you can see stuck at the top and the roadside rampage on the bottom. To quickly explain this graph, the thicker line means the more damage the weapon does. As you can see, the roadside rampage is exponentially increasing in damage while stock remains constant. Assuming there are multiple enemies, or a boss, aka a constant source of damage, the roadside rampage can be significantly more powerful. However, as you can see here, if enemies don't come out consistently, then it will result in doing significantly less damage than stock. This can hurt, especially in the early game. Playing the roadside rampage and not being able to gain rage feels like throwing rocks at your enemy. If there's one thing that I can compliment this gun about, it's its balancing. Although it's not perfect, we'll get to that later, its stats are really interesting and I really liked how the development team did them. Usually, in a gun that's all about rampaging and building up your rage meter, they would increase the spread. But the interesting thing about this gun is that it has less spread, meaning that you can rampage, but rampage methodically. Meaning they can aim better and hit targets that are farther away. This is a very good strength of the gun. However, I can't deny how bad this gun is in the early game. Possibly any other option would be better. Like, seriously, this is a real problem. The devs should probably fix this. Like, this is a real balancing issue. An important thing to know is when spending XP for this weapon, the damage dealt dictates how much rage you gain. Meaning that whenever you're upgrading damage, you're upgrading the amount of rage you'll get per shot. This is important to know because spending damage upgrades on this weapon is significantly better than spending it on other weapons and is one of the first ones you should get. However, you shouldn't use the roadside rampage in the early game. You should pick another class, use stock, or just another psycho weapon. And because of how the roadside rampage works, it's important to reload in whatever chance you get. I get it, you're playing Defend the Train. You're neurodivergent, I'm neurodivergent, we like round numbers. However, brush that off to the side and simply allow yourself to play better. I know I've said it already, however, the biggest con behind this weapon is simply how terrible it is in the early game. As I said before, it's like throwing rocks at your enemy. This is by far the biggest con of the weapon. However, in the late game, or against bosses, is definitely the reload speed. Although the reload speed is the exact same compared to stock, it has a bigger clip and it feels significantly longer because of the extra fire rate you'll gain with the rage and the additional clip size. The last thing I want to talk about is the secondaries for the weapon, and 3 have stuck out to me. Any gun, the energy drink, or the Ratty Cola. The first thing I want to talk about are the various guns. There are multiple options for this, like the Judge, the Dragon Gun, the pistol, the Uzi. The reason why guns might be good for the backstreet business is because of a gun's long reload speed. The worse you do with the Roadside Rampage, the more necessary that secondaries become. Because the better you do with the Roadside Rampage, the more rage you're able to get. And the more rage you're able to get, the faster reload. And whenever you're reloading faster, you're spending less time not firing your gun. Meaning that you need a secondary. For what secondary gun you should use, 2 are probably the best. Either the Dragon Gun or the pistol. The Uzi is really bad because it has a far spread. And the Judge is really bad just because it has pretty bad damage. The reason why I recommended the energy drink is simply just because it gives you extra damage and firing speed. It gives you 15 extra % damage while moving and a constant 10 extra % firing speed. So whenever you have the effect active, make sure to move a lot. The last secondary I want to talk about is the Ratty Cola. It's good simply just because it gives you 20 extra damage, firing speed, and reload speed. In addition, one of the downsides being, it gives a weapon spread. However, in a lot of scenarios, it's not too big of a downside because the Roadside Rampage has a reduced spread, and it's especially good against a certain boss later. However, you have to be careful because of that extra 30% damage vulnerability will significantly weaken you. So that's it? We have nothing else to pad out more time? Oh wait, no, I have this. So usually the last segment I talk about is about bosses. And this one is the most important section for the Roadside Rampage, as it is, in my opinion, the weapon's greatest strength. But can I just vent for a bit? I want you to know how annoying it was to get footage for this segment. I had to server hop many times, and I can't tell you how many times I would get to Server Queen, but we would die to some sort of garbage special event. It is super annoying. In my opinion, special events shouldn't even be in the game for bosses. In fact, most of them shouldn't even be in the game at all. Are you kidding me? Secondaries only? How am I supposed to win against that? However, the Roadside Rampage is just so good against Bandit Queen. Maybe like the Blunderbuss would be slightly better, but I don't know, just let me show you this footage. To provide context, there was a special event going on that was class locked, meaning that you couldn't switch classes during the intermission. So I had no idea how he won. But here it is. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.